Congratulations. You were just dumped into a dystopian social experiment, and you get to feel like an outsider for thinking it's odd. Here's an example of what my night could look like. Tonight, I could go buy a vape and a dab pen. I could come home, 3 blinkers right to the dome, start ripping that vape. Then I could go on my computer and open a site where other humans around the world are posting pictures and videos of them naked, playing around with themselves, like just lollygagging, I guess. Those humans have also been surgically enhanced so that their appendages look larger. So while I'm paying to watch this person shake their shit, I can also pay to message them, and that person has actually outsourced messaging me to a Pakistani man who is acting like an American e-girl in order to entertain perverts on the internet. And on my other monitor, I could have Plinko pulled up, where each ball I drop is worth a month's salary of a man in the Congo mining every day. Now that was pretty, saying that all, I don't really do that stuff, guys, but that's an example of what you can do. So in this video, I wanted to break down some of the absurdity that we're supposed to act like is normal. I'll start by saying, as humans, we've always needed these belief systems. Whether it's our religion or our culture, like in the past, humans have always needed something to provide structure to their lives and to kind of make things make sense. And, relatively, those people were kind of idiots. Like, they didn't actually really know anything about what was going on. They were, more primitive people. Well, some of them might have been smart, but like they didn't actually know what the fuck was happening outside of just their kind of little tribe area. As a 22-year-old, I know the magnificent scale of time in the universe and life and how we've evolved and changed and made it to this point. And yet I'm still expected to spend 20 years in an education system that I don't respect and that I don't agree with, in order to get a job that I don't enjoy, in order to be given paper that we have deemed is kind of the root of everything, meaning money. You need money to have freedom, have really any time to do anything extra with your life. You need it literally just to survive, with food and shelter. Not to mention, a lot of people that I really dislike actually own the production of this meaningless resource that controls our entire lives, and they can actually make an infinite amount of it. So it really doesn't matter, does it? Add on to this our so-called elders, who in the past, we could look to for guidance and some reassurance as to what is actually happening in life, because they've lived it too. But in our case, they are totally bought into this system. And when I say that, I think of like a boomer or something. Not that I necessarily think they're all stupid. I just think that the programming has been over, 60 to 70 years. Where in our case, it was already a little bit weaker. And then, I grew up in a different time. I've had access to information since I was born. So because of this, I act differently, and I'm actually scrutinized by my elders. I happen to have grandparents that are very loving, I'd say, but they don't understand me, and they don't really understand my gripes with the system, because if you have a problem with the system, you get name called. You get called lazy or misguided. It takes everything in me to not go, "No, Grandma, I am not going to college." I don't know if you got the news, but we live on trillions of rocks and elements smashed together into a sphere by a force we don't understand in a near infinite firmament, I think that's how you say it, where then, for no reason anyone can explain, life began, and it didn't start anywhere else. It's the only place that we can, in the observable universe, that has this thing, and it starts as a single cell until it becomes conscious of itself. And once it became conscious of itself, it decided that in order to gather more resources, it needed to control the rest of the versions of itself. So they made a specific framework in order to extract as many resources as possible. And nothing is so cut and dry as I might make it seem, but at the end of the day, like that, these processes are in place for that reason. So now I'm dropped into this world at a tipping point. We all have, if you're in Gen Z, or honestly, anyone under like 40 years old, we're dropped into this world at this crazy technological tipping point with the equivalent of an 8 millionth of a percent of a star's life to experience the world. And I'm expected to live it in servitude of other people. And if servitude seems like a strong word, my point is that I'm not going to live it like other people just because that's what other people do, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, all of these other humans, guess what? It's their first time living, and it's my first time living. So I really see no sense in just believing that they, for some reason, have it right. because at the end of the day, literally no one knows what's going on. We are floating through space at, a million fucking miles an hour or something on a rock, and, other humans are telling us what's valuable, and I think they're wrong. But yeah, take that, Grandma. Just kidding. I love you, Grandma. It's not that I don't think in order to be part of a group, you should have to provide. I completely agree with that. I don't think that I should just be able to freeload because I don't agree with certain things, but also the work now is just so disconnected. The dream that I'm sold is that, it's to become the manager of the manager of the manager. That's the American dream. That's when you've really reached the peak. When you can stop doing shit outside and get inside into the AC and work on some spreadsheets or something. That's a rather naive way to look at it, but at the end of the day, not everyone can follow their dream. It's kind of a lie we've been sold, so that you kind of suck it up until you realize, hey, I got to give up on my dream to be able to eat and sleep inside. So now I have to do this. And now I'm tied to this job. I can't leave this job. I'm tied to the paycheck I get each week, which, there's no shame in having stability and success in your life. I don't really want it to seem like I'm, dogging on people. In some ways, I'm jealous of people that are able to do that, because there's a lot more clarity in that, and there's a lot more structure to life in that, which, I don't really have that. To clarify, I didn't go to college, which, unless you want to do, trades or something, which that's not a bad career path either, there's really, you got limited options. But to my point, if I had lived 300 years ago, and say I was the town baker or something, and every day, 7 days a week, I got up and made bread. While that would be more work, it wouldn't be a thing to me, because it'd be like, I'm a part of this community, I have a clear service, I know the people that I'm providing this service to, so I'm connected. That's the essence of human life, is to be in a community providing a service, in my opinion. And now to my point about, being the manager and the manager of the manager, there's such a disconnect. America's already kind of the land of the individual. So it's like, if I'm sitting in the HR of a software company that helps people design teleprompters. Terrible example, but you know what I'm saying. Like, the service that we're providing is getting farther and farther away, and it's not clear. And when it's not clear what you're producing and who you're producing it for, you're not going to care about the work, and you're just gonna have to suck it up, which is why jobs and the economy just feel so soulless, because it's not about providing for other humans. It's about, to some extent, exploiting other humans, and it's more about just getting as much of people's money as possible and providing as cheap a service in return. When you're a kid, you think that at the top of society, there must be, a bunch of smart guys in suits all standing around very serious and guiding the ship and making sure that society and life and the economy is all figured out, and there's just some elder statesmen that know what's up. And the older you get, the more you realize that it's not. Really, at the top of the game is actually just a bunch of sociopaths scrapping for all of the power and resources they could possibly attain in order to wield that over other humans, because that feels good. Not to mention, they all kind of appear to actually be in a cult that worships and eat, which, kind of plays into what I'm talking about. Stuff like The Files comes out, that's kind of earth-shattering to me, that, like I'm saying, when I was younger, I used to have some belief in what was happening. Now it's come out that all of the people that I'm supposed to vote for and be happy are in power and stuff. It turns out they're all just doing the most comically evil things possible, and that's the world that we live in. That's the timeline that we've received, and we just kind of have to suck it up, I guess. It just adds to the disassociation from what the fuck is actually happening in modern society. And the technology is really hitting a breaking point, especially since COVID. People have just sunken into their own worlds, which is really easy to do in a society designed like the US, where it's the land of the individual. You might have tight-knit stuff like your college buddies or your close family and stuff, but I'm not intrinsically tied to the people around me, even in my own neighborhood. I know some of my neighbors, and that's okay, but my family's been isolated from some of our other neighbors and kind of treated differently because of, different stereotypes that we might fall into, which is just a feeling that I don't think would happen in a more primitive society, or it would just happen less. You know, there's just less titles. There's less things that a person could be that for some reason you would ostracize them. I don't know. And you know, in the US, everything's been designed for the sole purpose of efficiency and money. So when you design everything like that, it's naturally going to corrode the soul of what you're creating. So kind of to get back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the video with the example of like what a young man could do tonight, or really anybody, doing this shit that is so meaningless. It is so meaningless. Like what is the point of life? You really need to sit there and you need to think about what life is about. What actually matters to you? It's got to be more than just a dopamine hit to you. That's not what life is. And the reason I get so upset about this is because, you know, I've worked in youth development. I see specifically I've worked with a lot of young men, and I see what it's doing to them. I see what being a teenager right now is all about, and how difficult and how really fucked up a lot of these kids' lives are gonna be because of the stimulants at their hands. I mean, they don't have the same, you know, if you're an adult watching this, and you were born like before the year 2000 or something, you know, you had an opportunity to grow up before all this was in play. You know, now you might be a little bit more high-minded, and you're like, well, obviously I'm not going to get addicted to OnlyFans models, or I'm not going to start ripping a dab pen. But that's because you had the opportunity to mature before that was super, super widespread like it is now. So we all have brains that are evolved to eat, you know, berries in a cave type of shit, and yet we have access to every stimulant on the planet at really, especially in America. I mean, you could just get this shit anywhere. If you have an internet connection like $50, you could really fuck up your life. All the things I just mentioned, it just dehumanizes people, and it makes it so you lose that connection. You know, you're able to get the short-term fulfillment from things that have no people involved. So, you know, to me, that's kind of the essence of it. You know, other people act like it's normal, people that are older than you and more well-established, and then it just is normal. And I guess if we're gonna have a good takeaway, because, you know, there's really no better way to see it, like, if you feel this way, you know, so do I. And so do a lot of people, because actually, like I said in this video, no one really knows what's going on. And we can, like, come up with different ways to make ourselves feel better, or we can kind of just sit in that. And, you know, if you have a curious brain like mine, sometimes it's a good thing. It makes it so everything's more awe-inspiring and just interesting around me, because I'll never know the answer. And to a curious person, that's a good thing. But also that curiosity kind of seeks answers. So when you can't have them, you can almost feel like kind of vindictive towards it and wishing it'd show itself to you. But no matter how you feel about it, I hope you have a great day. And shit is weird. You're not going crazy.